Well, I'm joined now by Nadav Shoshani, spokesperson for the IDF. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. It's the first time, in fact, we've spoken to you since that attack on the only functioning hospital left in the south of Gaza. As I was saying, it was attacked twice within the space of 10 minutes. How is the investigation into that tragic mishap, as Benjamin Netanyahu described it? How's the investigation going?
Well, I'll start by saying the obvious for us, but I think it's important to state. The IDF does not target journalists or people working in medical teams. The IDF was operating against the Hamas target in that place, and it is truly a tragic mishap, and we will be looking into it. We are looking into it. Sadly, I do not have any additional information. We'll be putting out the next stages of it, hopefully in the near future.
What does that mean, the near future?
Well, we're conducting this inquiry, this examination of the incidents on the field, on the ground, while our troops are also fighting Hamas terrorists, and we're doing our best to provide answers as fast as we possibly can. That's what we did last week, providing answers within 24 hours, putting that a main focus for us, and it still remains a main focus for us. But we're taking time to look into it in a very deep and thorough way, to learn from our mistakes, to provide transparent answers, and to make sure this never happens again. Because, as I said, we do not target journalists as such, and we regret the outcomes of that strike, and they were definitely not the target of our strike.
Yeah, there were two strikes, weren't there, within 10 minutes. If it was a double tap, as many believe, that's a war crime. Is that your understanding of what happened here?
Well, I can tell you what I understand is that we were operating against a Hamas target that was tracking the troop, and we're looking into how the troops acted in real time, the decision making, the approval, what did they use, how many times, if many times, and what happens. And I don't want to speak before the examination is over and before I have a real clear understanding of what happened there.
Yeah, it wasn't a Hamas observation camera, though, was it? It was a news camera providing a live stream operated by a Reuters cameraman, Hossam al-Masri. You were attacking a legitimate journalist and his camera.
Again, that's not true. That according to our initial inquiry that was held by the forces on the ground, they were targeting a Hamas target that was observing them for a few days. This is not something that happened in the heat of the moment. What is questioned is how they use the force in the decision making in real time, but not the target. The target, alongside the fact that there were journalists in different parts of the hospital, they were targeting a Hamas camera. I remind you, this is the way that Hamas is carrying out attacks against our troops in Gaza. One of their main ways is they use cameras, they track our forces, they pop out of a tunnel or a building, fire an RPG, or activate an explosive device that they have planted on the road or in the building. That's how they attack us. So this is something that has been checked, crossed with intelligence, and then executed. Now, there's questions about the execution that we're looking into, but we do not target journalists. We did not target a journalist in this case. And
sorry to interrupt.
And we'll keep looking into this incident.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. You made an interesting point there. You talked about another camera. Is it your understanding that there was a Hamas camera on that rooftop as well as the Reuters camera? Because I think that's the first time we've heard that. Certainly the hospital director said that there was no other camera on the roof. Well,
what I'm saying is there was a Hamas camera, according to our initial inquiry, and we're looking into the incident, what happened, and what were the things that led to this strike. But again, according to our initial inquiry, there was a Hamas camera. We were tracking it, we cross-referenced it with intelligence, and then we executed a strike against it.
What information justified a follow-on strike then into a location visibly filled with other journalists, legitimate journalists, and also medics?
I think that's something that will be answered in the further days and further details that we go into in this examination.
Data from Air Wars, which monitors civilian harm, indicates at least 24 separate double taps have happened in Gaza since the start of the conflict. Are investigations going into all of those?
I'm not aware of that report, but I can tell you something about how we can conduct our operation. Each strike that is a planned strike that is not against a threat that is life-threatening, that has posed in the battlefield, is approved in a rigorous process. Legal officers aerial officers, intelligence officers. And when something doesn't go right, like in the incident a week ago, we take the time, we study it, we examine it. If we need, we further it into an investigation and we learn from it. There is a process that includes legal officers that make sure that all our strikes are according to international law and make sure that our strikes are approved, signed with names of the people who approve it, making sure that the strikes are standing in our standards first and also in international law. And when it doesn't, we have extreme examinations and, if needed, investigations that can even lead to criminal charges.
OK, well, I was going to ask about that. Will IDF personnel who killed civilians and journalists be brought to account?
I think that's premature. In many cases throughout the war already, we've had multiple cases where we had examinations that led into investigations. Some led to some criminal charges. So the idea, and some led also to accountability and punishment on commanders who made wrong decisions. Let me just push back a little bit on that, because Action on Armed Violence has showed 88% of Israel's investigations into war crime allegations in Gaza over the last 2 years were either shut down or unresolved. 88%. Well, I don't know where that stat is coming from, but I can tell you this. Action on Armed Violence. IDF is checking hundreds of cases, in many cases even more, simultaneously while we're still fighting. And there's a team that is separate from the chain of command, and that's their job to check. Now, some of the processes are ongoing. The stats you said that I don't know where it's coming from, but it does not sound right to me. But there's a lot of investigations that are ongoing. These are processes that some of them can take time. Hopefully, and we're doing our best to find the answers as fast as we can, also to be accountable, transparent, and also to learn from our mistakes in real time in the battlefield. That is something we've done throughout this war. I personally have delivered the messages of inquiries and investigations that have been complete, of people who were held accountable, who were let go from their position because of their actions. I personally delivered some of those statements, so I know this is something we're dealing with. And sometimes these things take time. But we are doing our best to check them in a very thorough way. Understood. We'll wait patiently for that report and the evidence that comes with it. You talked about journalists, and I'd like to talk a bit more about journalists, if that's OK. Over 240 journalists killed in Gaza since October 2023, according to the UN, aside from those who died in the Nasser hospital 3 weeks ago. Pulitzer Prize-winning Al Jazeera correspondent Anas al-Sharif killed in Gaza City alongside colleagues. Can you understand how some will believe that there's a consistent pattern here of journalist deaths at hospitals, inside media tents, in clearly marked press sites, on the top of that hospital, which journalists have been using for many weeks? How can it be explained away other than to say it is systematic targeting? Well, I think there's two very different cases. There is a tragic incident from last week that we are looking into, examining, that we have expressed deep regret about it. And then there's other cases. Anas al-Sharif was a terrorist, an active terrorist in the military wing of Hamas, receiving a salary from Hamas. So I think the picture is way more complex than that. I understand why people might look in the incidents, but the picture is very complex and it needs to be explained. Gaza is the place where Hamas controls everything. Hamas control everything. There are so many cases. We've seen it on October 7th. Part of one of the largest terror attacks, massacres in humanity. Journalists were part of the forces going in, so-called journalists. So I think there's a serious problem here. It's very hard to trust the journalists who are in Gaza because you simply don't know whether they're associated with Hamas or not. Right, but I know I can speak on our behalf. Well, there's a simple solution then, isn't there? Send in independent international. I can speak on our behalf and say that every strike that we conduct is checked. If there's not valid, concrete intelligence, I've seen with my own eyes the intelligence of Anas al-Sharif. Some we were able to declassify, some not. Active terrorists in a military wing of Hamas. And I think, and that discussion needs to be also asked. The world needs to ask, are we also holding Hamas accountable for abusing the dignity of the press vest? Because I think wearing a press vest is very important. I take reporters with me into Gaza, and I know and I hope that their vest is respected, and we do everything. All right. Sorry, we take your point. We take your point. We're short of time, and I just want to play you a clip from Benjamin Netanyahu from about three weeks ago. Have a listen to this.
We have decided, and I've ordered, directed the military to bring in foreign journalists, more foreign journalists, a lot. There's a problem of assuring security, but I think it can be done in a way that is responsible and careful to preserve your own safety. So the directive has been since, when is it, 2 days ago. From what you're telling me, it hasn't yet been implemented, but it should be, because I think you should see it.
So a direct order then from the Prime Minister for the IDF to take international journalists into Gaza. That was 3 weeks ago. How many have you taken in?
Well, I've taken into Gaza personally. Me and my team have taken dozens of reporters in around maybe 8 to 10 occasions in the last
independent
maybe
international. Okay, independent international journalists. What organisations?
So my job at IDF spokesperson is to take people on embeds with IDF troops. That's what I can speak about.
Which organisations were they from then?
In recent weeks,
taken them in,
at least once a week. And many of the weeks twice a week, dozens of different...
Which organisations are they from? Which media organisations?
Wide organizations, and we're also participating with Foreign Press Associates in Israel, giving them an option.
Which organisations have you taken journalists in from?
I was saying, you cut me off in the middle of the sentence, we have various news outlets from all across the world that we work with, and we also give place to the FPA, the Foreign Press Association, to put forward the names of the people they want to choose. So there's someone who's external who can choose the reporters going in. And we do our best to provide an opportunity to anyone who wants to come in. Any reporter can join us. If you want to recommend a friend, we will
Sky News would love to come in
even next week. And you're invited. If you come to Israel, I'll take you in personally with me.
Right. So which organisations in the last 3 weeks have you taken in? Which media organisations, specifically, name names, have you taken in?
I think I tend to keep my professional relationships with the outlets. I work with them. I can provide them afterwards, but I think there's no secrecy. There's respect when you are a spokesperson working with journalists, and you work with them and you communicate with them. I don't need to name the names. There's been dozens of reporters coming in with us to Gaza in recent weeks.
And we can come in with you
anyone
next
who
week.
Wants to come can come with us into Gaza.
Sky News can come into Gaza. And you're saying that Sky News can come into Gaza with you next week?
Sure, you're invited.
OK, we will be there. Just name the time and the place. I want to talk about something. Well, actually, I just want to check, and that will be on an embed. We won't be given unfettered access, obviously. That'll be with IDF troops.
I am in charge on embeds. I have brought in dozens of reporters in recent weeks, and we'll continue doing that at least once a week, maybe twice a week. You're invited. And that's my part. I'm in charge of having reporters join IDF troops, and I coordinate that, and we've done that a lot in recent weeks.
OK, we'll hold that to you. I want to talk about Greta Thunberg just before we let you go. She and others have been attempting once again to bring aid into Gaza by sea. It's been reported by the newspaper Israel Hayom that she'll be detained in terrorist-level conditions in a detention centre. Is that right?
Well, I don't know about that. That's more for the different authorities in Israel. But I can tell you this. We've already dealt with these types of cruises to Israel. They bring very little aid, not even close to the amount that's going in daily to Gaza. Hundreds of trucks have been going into Gaza daily. And Israel said we're happy to facilitate any aid from anywhere going into Gaza, airdrops on the ground and so on. And I think that's what's important in this discussion, and not to make it a cynical discussion.
OK. And finally, the ongoing operation in Gaza City. For those who are simply too ill or too weak to move, can you guarantee their safety?
Well, you know, we've shown throughout this war with Hamas that began on October 7th and has continued ever since that we are doing everything we can to keep civilians out of harm's way, to give notice. The IDF is the army in recent history that has given up the element of surprise the most times in this type of war. And we plan on doing that moving forward. Moving forward on our operations on Gaza City, we have planned a humanitarian plan. Where should people go? How should they go? When they arrive to that said area,
what if they can't go? What if they're too ill, too sick, or too hungry to move?
So there's a lot of efforts going on, including with the international community, to make sure that we are doing everything we can. Again, this is a difficult war. We know, as we've seen in the past in northern Gaza, that Hamas will try and prevent people from leaving areas so they can use them as human shields. We've seen this in the past. We are committed to doing everything we can to provide notice, to provide the routes, to work with the international community on solutions. And that's what's going to happen in Gaza City as well. And as we were speaking, there's works being done to repair water lines in southern Gaza, to make sure tents are coming into Gaza, in southern Gaza, food, field hospitals, etc., because this is important for us, and this goes in the same line with our operational plans to make sure that there's a humanitarian plan supporting our operational plans.
We've kept you far too long. Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani, IDF spokesman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's bring in our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons. He was listening to that in Jerusalem. Adam, I don't know what your plans are next week, but you're invited to go into Gaza with the IDF.
Yeah, I mean, that's an invitation that I'm sure Sky News will accept. Let's wait and see what strings may be connected to that and what may be their interpretation of that, but that seems pretty clear. They have conducted embed entries into Gaza before. They did one a week ago or so for Israeli journalists who saw scenes of absolute devastation. But yes, we will follow up on that, and it was something that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had said, is that he thought the international press should get in. Now, I think for those who are not familiar with this terminology, when we talk about an embed, what we mean is you are embedded with the military. In other words, you go in with them inside one of their vehicles. You don't have free movement of where to go. You will talk to them and get taken out with them. You will get images of Gaza, but obviously you will go to the places that they take you. That is as good as it gets in Gaza at the moment. That's as good as it has been throughout this war, because the Israeli government, the Israeli military, will not allow unfettered access to journalists to see for themselves what's going on. Their argument, publicly certainly, is that it's simply too dangerous to allow that to happen. Of course, there are plenty who think that what is happening is that international independent media are not being allowed to see what is happening in Gaza, and thus, as you said, Jonathan, reliant on the journalists who are already in Gaza, way over 200 of whom have been killed during this war.
OK, Adam in Jerusalem, thank you for now.